Welcome to new video, The Sacrificial Egg by Chinua Achebe. So let us discuss the historical context of the story first. If we want to understand the sacrificial egg in detail, we have to know at first about colonial Nigeria. That is from 1900 to 1960. How was the life in Nigeria? Nigeria, it was a British colony from 1914 to 1960. And this colonial rule, as we know about the colonial impact in different places and different regions, here also we can see the colonial rule that disrupted traditional Igbo society by imposing Western values and institutions. At the same time, Christian missionaries also introduced Western education, leading to cultural conflicts. Then pre-independence Nigeria. How was Nigeria before getting independence? We can understand that nationalist movements got emerged during this period, that is between 1940 and 1950, seeking independence from British rule. And Igbo people, they faced cultural erosion as traditional practices were suppressed. Urbanization and modernization were also effective factors that transformed rural areas, especially Umuru or regions like Umuru in Nigeria. Then what was the social change that occurred after the Second World War? That is during 1945 and 1960. Global decolonization movements gained momentum during this period. African nations began to assert independence. Nigeria's independence movement also got intensified during this period. Now about the cultural significance. Chinua Achebe's story reflects the tensions between traditional Igbo culture and Western modernity. That is how his own culture got influenced or affected, in fact, by Western modernity. The narrative critiques colonialism's impact on indigenous societies. As we know how this colonialism affected Indian culture. The same happened in other colonies. And here the sacrificial egg, it represents the struggle for cultural identity during Nigeria's transition to independence. And now about Chinua Achebe. He was a Nigerian novelist, poet, and critic. Born in Ogidi, Nigeria, he grew up in a traditional Igbo community. That is why he had that first-hand experience about the impact of colonialism in his native culture. His experiences during colonial rule and Nigeria's transition to independence influenced his writing. And about the literary context, The Sacrificial Egg is part of Achebe's early work, exploring themes of cultural identity and colonialism. As we have already said, how the colonialism affected Nigeria. Here we could see how the characters are trying to get the identity, cultural identity there. The story foreshadows Achebe's acclaimed novel Things Fall Apart, which was published in 1958 and which critiques colonialism's impact on Igbo society. So now we can understand the impact of colonialism on Nigeria and the Igbo people as it is reflected in The Sacrificial Egg and other works by Chinua Achebe. The social impact is that we can see the cultural erosion because suppression of traditional practices and values can be seen in colonial regions. The same happened everywhere. And then we can see identity crisis. There is confusion between Igbo and Western cultures. as we can see, anywhere in the colonial regions, we can see how the indigenous people or native people are struggling to have their own identity there when they are getting affected by the Western culture, Western tradition, or Western modernity. And we can also see the theme of family disintegration there, that is breakdown of traditional family structures. That is, this means that they are going away from their tradition, their concept of family, their traditional concept of family. And urbanization, migration from rural areas to cities leading to cultural displacement. So what happened is that when people are migrating from rural areas to cities, there we can see the cultural displacement is, or they are struggling with this cultural displacement. Even now we can see that cultural displacement in diasporic writings. And what was the economic impact of this? We can see the exploitation, that is, these colonizers, they extracted natural resources, exploiting Nigeria's wealth. Then we can see the dependency, that is, Nigeria's economy became reliant on Western powers. That is, even though they are living in their native land, they are depending upon some others. So they are depending upon foreigners to have or to make their economy stable. Underdevelopment, that is because of the colonial policies, hindered Nigeria's economic growth. That was the economic impact. Then we have the political impact. We can see the loss of autonomy. Igbo people, they lost control over their land and governance. And thus we can see it is very clear that in British colonial administration, how they were trying to impose the foreign rule there, how they were replacing traditional leaderships there. It's quite natural when they were trying to replace this traditional leadership, when they were trying to impose foreign rule there, a foreign tradition there, resistance and rebellion happened. It's quite natural. So thus Igbo people, they resisted colonial rule, leading to conflicts. So what was the psychological impact of all these things? They started feeling cultural inferiority complex, because Igbo people, they were made to feel inferior to Western cultures. That is, actually they were getting trained to believe that they were inferior to Western people. Their culture is something that is inferior to Western culture. Loss of traditional knowledge, thus they had to suppress Igbo language, Igbo customs and practices. Everything they had to suppress. Trauma and displacement, definitely it becomes the consequence of this, all these things. That is, when they started feeling cultural inferiority complex, when they started feeling the loss of traditional knowledge, the result will definitely trauma and displacement. The result will be trauma and displacement. We can see how the colonization caused emotional and physical trauma in the life of Nigerian people. And we can see the legacy of colonialism there, that is post-colonial conflicts, ethnic and religious tensions persist in Nigeria. Economic instability was there because Nigeria struggles with corruption, poverty and inequality, because during the period of colonial rule, they were ruled by British people. So they started feeling the cultural identity crisis there. So Igbo people, they continue to navigate traditional and Western influences. So Achebe's works, including this particular work, The Sacrificial Egg, it highlights the complex and far-reaching consequences of colonialism on Nigerian society. Now, about the story. The story revolves around Julius Obi, who is an educated Igbo man working for a European trading company in Umuru, Nigeria. And he is engaged to Janet, whose mother, Ma, blends Christian faith with traditional Igbo superstitions. As smallpox ravages Umuru, Julius Obi worries about Janet and Ma, whom he hasn't seen in a week. One night, he unintentionally crushes an egg left as a sacrifice at a crossroad, transferring someone else's bad luck to himself. That is the storyline of the sacrificial egg. And here we can see the themes like cultural heritage versus Western influence. The story explores the tension between Igbo traditions and Western modernization. That is, we can see how these people they give importance to the uh, culture. That is, in Igbo culture, there are 4 days in a week, like Nko, Ike, Oye, it is also called Ori, and Efo. And earlier, the market is open. Market was open only on Noko. Later, the market is open every day, which is the influence or which shows the influence of new civilization, and it shows the growth of the town. Now, Noko has become the busiest day there, and people from different places come there to trade the produce of their lands for household goods and food. So, like many people in Umuru, Julius is also coming there. Julius Obi is from, it is said that he's from some bush village inland. He also comes there, and his education in a mission school has given him the skills that is necessary to work for the European trading company whose building overlooks the market. So there we can see how the story explores the tension between Igbo tradition and Western modernization. Then colonialism's negative effects. Achebe critiques colonialism's disruption of indigenous cultures and societies. It also shows the clash between traditional beliefs and modernization. Julius' Western education conflicts with his Igbo roots. Though he didn't have that much belief in Igbo customs, later he too started believing in it. That is, once the market is empty one day because Umuru has been besieged by smallpox. So the Igbo people, they call this disease as Kitikpa. That is personifying it as an evil deity, right? Who demand the sacrifice the inhabitants of the gods of the soil. So there wasn't any smallpox in Umuru when it was just a small village with a weekly market. So when they had this progress there, when they had this urbanization there, when the village turned into a busy, sprawling, crowded and dirty river port full of strangers who forsake their duties at home in favor of money and trade, smallpox arrived there as a result, it is believed. Okay, so there we can see the clash between traditional beliefs and modernization. And later, when Julius Obi, he had to face the death of Janet and Ma, he too started believing that. And the characters, Julius Obi, we have already said that he's the protagonist there, who is an educated Igbo man struggling with cultural identity. Ma is Janet's mother, who represents the blending of Christian and Igbo beliefs. Janet is Julius' fiancée, symbolizing the intersection of tradition and modernity. And Chief Clerk is there, who is Julius' European boss, embodying colonial authority. And the setting of the story is Umuru in Nigeria. The time is pre-independence, before 1960. The story reflects the societal changes brought by colonialism. And style, HAB employs a fractured flashback technique here, weaving together Julius' reflections on past events. The narrative incorporates Igbo language and cultural nuances. And the symbolism, the egg, it represents the transference of misfortune and the clash between tradition and modernity. Smallpox symbolizes the destructive impact of colonialism on indigenous societies. Crossroads are there, which represents the intersection of cultures and the consequences of cultural exchange. So the story reflects or we can say the sacrificial egg story. It serves as an allegory for colonialism's destructive effects on indigenous cultures. So HAB highlights the resilience of local customs amidst external pressures. That's all about the sacrificial egg. Thank you.